that was conducted after a long period of waiting, a long period after assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, and it was a long-expected retaliatory action that we are seeing tonight from Tehran. They didn't deny the possibility of a second round. This is one important point. Another point was that Iranian state television reported that it's not just Tel Aviv under attack. Other parts of the occupied territories are under attack at the time being. They also said this many parts of occupied territories were under attack. Tens of ballistic missiles, according to the report, have been fired, and we are waiting for further details. But it was also reported that the current operation has been conducted under the ratification of Iranian National Security Council, from which we had Mr. Ahmadian today that talked about the possibility of retaliation. He said that this is not Red Iran, this is the resistant front and the entire resistant movement that has been engaged into this war. Therefore, we're not waiting for, I'm quoting him, single action. With that said, I think we will be waiting for more comprehensive actions from the resistant front in these hours down the road.
Okay, Tauhid Asadi, thank you very much for all of that you're bringing us from Iran. So the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, said just moments ago, confirming they launched at least 250 missiles towards Israel. They warned that if Israel retaliated to that attack, then Tehran's response would be, quote, more crushing and ruinous. They also said that this was the response to Israel's assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the then leader of Hamas, in Tehran. That was late July, and the response to Israel's assassination of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. That was just on Friday. Let's go to, I'm also getting now this information. No, let's go to Dorsa. Dorsa Jabari is in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, for us. Dorsa, what do you have on your end? Is anything moving? What are you learning? What are you hearing?
Well, people here are celebrating, Cyril. We've heard over the past 20 minutes since the news broke of Iran's unprecedented attack on Israel, non-stop gunfire and fireworks being set off across the capital. We have been hearing the sounds of gunshots and fireworks. We didn't know what they were at first, and then we realized what was happening. The supporters of Hezbollah celebrating Iran's decision to launch their second attack in Islamic Republic's history since the revolution of 1979. Iran and Israel certainly no friends at all, longtime enemies, and now with this latest move that must not have been an easy decision for Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who has ruled the country for over 35 years. He decided last April that he had to show their country's strength. So last time Iran attacked Israel, it was April 13th, about 12 days after Israel killed 5 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard on the Iranian consulate section in Damascus. And Iran decided they had to respond. But how they responded was very different than what we're seeing tonight. They, through back channels, warned the United States and Western powers to tell Israel that Iran was going to carry out that attack. So Israel knew it was coming. Tonight, only an hour or so before this attack was launched, Israel started to put out basically signals from the United States that it was waiting for an attack by Iran. Very different scenario, and from what we understand, the statement from the Revolutionary Guard that it's not over yet, that this is just a start. Now, what Iran's end game is here, other than to show their strength and to draw some red lines for the Israeli officials, is not clear at the moment. But what Israel has said already is that this is now a red line for them that Iran has crossed, and they are going to respond with force to Iran's latest attacks.
That is, so you're saying the response isn't quite clear. I want to tell our viewers at this juncture that you've done a ton of reporting from Iran. You have spent a ton of time in Tehran, and you understand as well as anybody, really, how they operate. Can you sort of using that knowledge, can you walk us through what the calculus is going to be from Iran going forward? Because I've been told countless times by commentators they do not want a head-on collision with Israel.
No, they don't, and I still think they don't. What we have seen over the past few days since the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah is really Benjamin Netanyahu pushing Iran for this attack and then giving him an excuse to launch what he has always wanted is strikes on Iran's 6 declared nuclear facilities. For Israel and the prime minister there, their real goal in going after Hamas and going after Hezbollah has been to get to Iran. And pushing Iran all this time to take this step that they have taken tonight to justify any kind of action that we will be seeing Israel take inside Iran. Until now, all the assassinations of high-ranking officials inside Iran and outside Iran, attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, attacks on Iran's nuclear scientists by Israel have never been acknowledged by Israel. Israel has never claimed any responsibility for those assassinations and attacks and acts of sabotage. But this time, it's going to be different. Benjamin Netanyahu put out a video statement, a 3-minute statement a few days ago, addressing the Iranian people. He knows how fragile the system is in Iran in terms of its popularity. The society is very, very upset and dissatisfied with the way the country has been running. Countless sanctions, unprecedented amount of economic
doing okay.
pressure,
this is stressful.
Human rights violations. There is no freedom of the press in the country in terms of what it used to be prior to the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022. We saw protests that went on for 4 months, at least 8 protesters executed in Iran. So all these events have really put a strain on the society, and Israel, seeing that this is a moment possibly of weakness for Iranian officials in the system and trying to capitalize on it by pressuring Hamas, by assassinating Iranian officials outside of Iran and in the region, to try and force Iran's hand to do exactly what we're seeing tonight, to launch
Dorsa, quick pause, because you said something
to Israel and the occupied territories.
You said something that I hope you can expand on a little bit for our viewers. I think many people will have missed this. You said that Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the message directly to Iranians, and frankly, unless you follow the Twitter account of the office of the Israeli Prime Minister, you probably will, our viewers probably will have missed that message. But he does have that 3-minute message up online, it's still there, where he addresses Iranians directly. Can you tell our viewers what he said and what was the general gist of it? Because he had this mysterious quote at the time, wasn't it, about something along the lines of, you will be free sooner than you think.
Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu, in this message with Farsi subtitles, said basically his fight is not with the Iranian people. He does not want the country to, what he said was, perish in the hands of this regime. He said that soon they will be able to be free within their own country. He is selling himself as the savior, as someone who can help the Iranian nation get rid of the establishment that's been in power, the clerical establishment that's been in power since 1979, really setting himself up for whatever is about to happen in Iran by Israel, that really they're targeting the officials and the establishment, and they don't want the people to fear what is going to happen. And also he said he needs their help, that he's going to need them to really use whatever powers that they have to turn against the system. He is essentially calling for the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. And he himself is positioning his own powers that he has as someone that can bring them what he calls democracy. Now, this is a very dangerous path to get on. The Iranian nation of nearly 86 people may not necessarily understand the nuances of what Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to do, but it's at a time when they need to hear someone make some promises to alleviate some of the strains they have been on. Now, Certainly, it's not ideal that this message is coming from an Israeli prime minister, but at a time when Iran is witnessing unprecedented blow after blow after blow, Ismail Haniyeh being the latest one, in the capital, in the heart of Tehran, in North Tehran, in a secure Revolutionary Guard house. He is assassinated in the middle of the night. It begs the question, how much control do the regime have within their own intelligence apparatuses? All these weaknesses highlighted to the society and the Iranian people really feeling like when Iran is under pressure when it comes to its foreign policy, they put more pressure on the country itself on a domestic front. So really his message coming at a very critical time and very telling of what we're going to see in the next few days.
Dorsa, thank you very much. I actually looked up the quote, so I found it for you, found it for our viewers. Benjamin Netanyahu said in that little speech, quote, "When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different," end quote. So I saw it, I think it was 2 days ago, and probably like you, I thought, what does he mean? You know, could be something, could be nothing. Dorsa Jabari, thank you very much for your reporting, for your explanations. When you've got something new, just raise your hand. We'll come right back to you. Thank you very much, Dorsa. Let's bring in Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher, who's joining us now from the U.S. State Department in Washington. Alan, what are you hearing on your end?
Well, obviously, the United States will be concerned about what is happening and has happened in the last hour because they had been talking about de-escalating tension in the area, something that they've been going on about since October last year, worried about there could be a wider war, and this is exactly the sort of thing that could well spark a greater conflict. It's just 24 hours since the State Department said that they believe that maybe perhaps Israel's military involvement in Lebanon could force some level of diplomacy. But they were always aware that the Iranians could launch a retaliatory strike. And that seems to what's happened in the last hour. Certainly the US made people aware that they thought this was coming. Their intelligence suggested it was imminent. And within the hour of that announcement being made, we saw those missiles being fired into Israel, into Jerusalem and into Tel Aviv as well. Now, there will be moves going on behind the scenes here to try and limit what is going on. You'll remember that earlier this year, when the Iranians launched an attack against Israel, the United States built up a coalition of Arab countries to help take down some of the drones and cruise missiles that were fired. They were cruise missiles and drones fired because they take slightly longer to get to Israel from Iran. And that was seen as a move by the Iranians to perhaps give the Israelis more time, that this was some sort of symbolic attack rather than something that was due to inflict a great deal of damage. The fact that they have fired ballistic missiles means that this is a different kind of attack. And so the ground under the feet of the State Department has been changed markedly as well. All of this coming as Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, published an article in Foreign Policy magazine just today talking about how the strategy of renewal that rebuilt American leadership, including in the Middle East. Now, of course, we've been hearing since October and November the US saying that they don't want to see this conflict escalate, and they've put pressure on the Israelis at various points, from trying to not move into Rafah in Gaza in any great numbers, to put more aid into Gaza during the offensive there, to try and cut down the number of civilian casualties in Rafah, to urge the Israelis not to move in to Beirut, into southern Lebanon. They said that they wanted to not see any sort of ground incursion, believing that that could increase the tension. And at no point does it appear that the Israelis have taken any action. One final thing to say here, just on the back of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech talking to the Iranian people. Of course, the United Nations General Assembly ended just last week. And a few years ago, Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the UNGA and America in particular. And he said that if they could take out the bad man in the area, then things in the Middle East would be so much better. It would be a better neighbourhood. That bad man was Saddam Hussein. The war against Iraq was launched not long after that. And as we've seen, the Middle East is not a better neighbourhood, despite Benjamin Netanyahu's predictions at the time.
Thank you for the historical context there. I think it's going to be necessary. And I'm going to keep in mind this Alan Fisher quote, "The ground under the feet of the State Department has changed massively." Alan, I think it's fair to expect that the U.S. are going to have to respond officially pretty quickly. It's probably going to come in waves. As soon as you have something on your end, please let us know. Thank you very much. That's Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher. Now, Mohammad Morandi is a professor at the University of Tehran. He joins us by Skype from Beirut. Mohammad, your thoughts. I think it's the first time, though it is, when we last spoke, this attack hadn't yet happened. In fact, I had to interrupt you because there was a gun attack in Tel Aviv. And now, of course, everything has changed. And we're seeing why on our screens, because Iran has now fired more than 200 missiles at Israel. Your first thoughts?
Well, as I said many times before, the Iranian response was inevitable. When the Israeli regime carried out the assassination in Tehran, it was simply a matter of time. I've said this time after time, and now we have seen the results. And if the Israeli regime strikes Iran, if they try to escalate again, Iran will hit back even harder. So the regime should be very careful about any stupid move that it wants to make. And I do want to correct what your reporter said. I was a bit surprised at some of the things she says. Iran is a very stable country. It has popular legitimacy. There were no executions of protesters. Only people who murdered other people were executed. We have capital punishment in the country. I think right now, if you go to Tehran and look at the footage, people are celebrating across the country on the streets. And
I love this guy. He gives great analysis.
The Islamic Republic of Iran has been punished for decades by the
comes on a lot of lefty shows.
Allies for supporting the Palestinian people. All of these sanctions are about Iran's humanitarian policies with regards to Palestine and its opposition to Zionism and apartheid, not to Judaism and not to anything else, but the fact that an ethno-supremacist regime, a colonial regime, rules over.
Hey, Obsessive Audio, how's it going?
That is what Iran's problem has been. And until now, the Iranians have shown patience. The Iranians did not respond to many provocations in the past because Iran does not want a regional war. However, as I said earlier, if the Israeli regime pushes, we could move in that direction. The Americans have to be very careful. Netanyahu wants a regional war. But if there is a regional war, that means that oil and gas installations can all be destroyed. We see Iran's capabilities. This is nothing. This is the tip of the iceberg. So I think the Americans should be very careful and not be too arrogant anymore, because Iran will defend its sovereignty, as it has shown just now.
Mohammed, well, first of all, it goes without saying that we stand by the reporting of our teams. But that's not really the issue this hour. My question is, Iran and the IRGC specifically have said this is the first part of our response. They have left open the door, which is not exactly surprising. It's in character. They have left open the door to, but who knows? In fact, who knows what they've left the door open to? But basically, they've said, we have started, and we don't know how much further this might go from the IRGC. What is Iran's end goal here?
Deterrence. Remember, we were discussing earlier about the initial strikes that Iran carried out. I was explaining that Iran fired a lot of old drones and some older missiles to create deterrence. But the real objective alongside that was not only to deplete the American and the Israeli air defense system and cost a few $1 billion, but more important than that was Iran was gathering information to see what capabilities they have in case the Israeli regime did the foolish thing and carried out escalation. So now when you see the Iranian strike today, you better understand what happened in April. And the Iranians today have only fired a very, very, very small proportion of what they have. And by the way, Hezbollah has enormous capabilities underground. I have said this before over the past few days. Hezbollah's military capabilities are untouched. The assassinations in Beirut, where because of the nature of the city of Beirut, where intelligence agencies, Western embassies, Western NGOs, some Western journalists and others, they have been there for decades. It's always been a city of espionage. They scored successes, some successes in Beirut, but they have not touched Hezbollah's military capability, which is underground, and it exists in thousands of kilometers of tunnels across the country.
Mohammed, I'm sorry to do this to you again. Respectfully, I'm going to have to interrupt you again because we have a live event. And we're going to go to that, but we will speak to you again a little later. This is the Israeli military spokesman, I'm told, Daniel Hagari. Let's listen in.
Some consequences, and we will work in a timely manner. I will stay here during this evening in order to inform you and keep you updated. Continue to act responsibly. Question, do you expect any additional airstrikes? As I said, I always come and talk to you after assessing the situation with the cabinet and with partners in the United States. Currently, we don't see any further threats in our airspace. That's why we have instructed that you can leave the shelters, and we will continue to monitor the situation closely. If there are any updates, we will keep you informed, and I will be here all the evening. Question. Is the army going to respond or retaliate? As I said, we are fully prepared to defend and to retaliate, and we are currently assessing the situation, and we will respond or retaliate in a timely manner. Question, do you think we are in a regional war? We are taking a war at different fronts, and this is not the first time that we are being attacked by Iran. This airstrike was wide. They have launched a lot of missiles in different places. Those missiles have landed but did not cause any injuries. Thanks to your responsible behavior and for respecting the instructions and guidelines, and also with the help of our partners as they continue to protect our citizens, we will continue to act in the same manner. Question, is the army ready to respond and retaliate immediately? We are fully prepared, and we are conducting attacks in different fronts. This is very serious, and there will be a retaliation when in a timely manner. I will get back to you and keep you informed. Please, I call on the citizens to continue to act responsibly. Your behavior has been honorable, so continue to do so.
Okay, you've been listening to the Israeli military spokesman, Daniel Hagari. So a couple things he said there. He was asked the question, do you expect more airstrikes? And he said, currently, we do not see further threats. And you can leave the shelters. So that's the clearest indication there is, really, that Israel feels Iran's attack is not over. Let me cross now to Al Jazeera's Hamda Salhout, who's in Jordan's capital, Amman, because Israel has shut down Al Jazeera's bureau inside Israel. Hamda, first of all, were you able to hear that from Hagari? Because we just grabbed it live. I don't want to ask you questions about something you haven't heard.
Yes, Sarah, I was listening in.
Okay, so you may have caught the earlier moments of it. Maybe we missed something. What did he say?
Well, the Israeli army spokesperson is saying that there aren't really injuries, but medical authorities have reported at least 2 people who are quite injured from shrapnel. We have received videos from the scene of an interception. When it happens in the sky, the shrapnel rains down, and the barrels from these missiles that were launched from Iran are quite large. So they have struck a couple of people, but it's still unclear where exactly those injuries took place. But at this time, the army is saying that they're not expecting more attacks from Iran. But it's worth mentioning that earlier in the day, when the Israelis had this intelligence that Iran was going to attack soon, they said they were not detecting anything, that Israeli Air Force jets were patrolling the skies all over the Middle East and did not detect anything, but nonetheless that Israel is going to respond. This is something the Israelis have been saying for some time, that any sort of attack from any which direction, whether it be Iran, Yemen, Gaza, Lebanon, Iraq, that there will be a response. And we have seen a lot of Israeli attacks in several places throughout the Middle East when certain groups or countries do launch attacks into Israel. So the army is saying at this time that the home front command guidelines have changed, meaning that people can leave shelters and that the incident is over.
Hamda, in terms of targets being struck, I don't know if they've collected, because I did hear Hagari say we're still assessing. What information do you have on the targets that were or were not struck in Tel Aviv or even elsewhere in Israel?
Well, it's still unclear at this time as Israelis are trying to gather information because this is an attack that went all across Israel and even the occupied Palestinian territories. I mean, these rockets were even seen in the skies of Gaza. But it's important to note that according to American intelligence that was given to the Israelis, and these officials spoke anonymously earlier in the day, they said that there were 3 specific targets, 2 military bases and an intelligence headquarters in the central part of the country. It's unclear if they've been hit, but the Israelis had said that intelligence headquarters had been evacuated in preparation. But it is worth